Hello guys, welcome to the, what is this, the 4th edition of Cut the Fluff. My name is Sham. Why don't you do me a favor quickly? Let us know if you can hear us. We've just been having some studio difficulties, so apologies for that, but this is basically 2020 with a years of experience. So don't you want to just go into our chat functionality over there and let me know if you can hear us. I've got it just so I can see when you respond, and we'll get maneuvering. Never mind. I know exactly that it's going because I can test it myself. Welcome, guys. So as you know, my name is Sham, and today I have a really cool guest in studio. He goes by the name of Allon Raiz. I think that's the name that his mother gave him. Allon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Always good to spend time with you.
I'm not even bugged about these types of things anymore because this is kind of exactly why the show exists. It's been a frantic last year now. I saw something that was fascinating in my Facebook memories this morning. I saw a video that I made from exactly today, a year ago. I was walking around in London, and it was amazing to observe a year ago Mark, who was just panicked and freaked out. Did you have the same experience of COVID, and where you're at now versus a year ago?
Mark, totally. If I look, this is now the week that we go into lockdown. We went into lockdown as a business a week before the president forced us. And, for me, at that point, you don't know anything. You don't understand what COVID is. You don't understand if you're going to operate digitally. You don't understand what's going to happen with your customers. They're starting to call you. They're starting to want to cancel accounts. You're calling your suppliers. You're doing the same thing. It feels like a war zone out there in your mind, and yet in a leadership position, you have to have this veneer of calm, but it's not like a duck going. It's like, I don't know what it is, like a cheetah legs going underneath you, and you have to keep this veneer of calmness. But it was, in my mind, I think we all have got post-traumatic stress disorder from the last year.
Yeah, so one of the major reasons why I love chatting to you in general, but also asked you to be here today, is you are very well known for being the founder and CEO of Raiz Corp. For the people who don't know, you effectively are Africa's, I guess you could call, largest incubator. You deal with a bunch of businesses. I don't know how many businesses you have collectively under your stable, but what makes it interesting is that you've got this broad overview across multiple industries and sectors. And then when COVID hit, I was really curious to understand how you responded, because you weren't responding just for your own business. You were potentially helping other founders and CEOs respond with different contexts and, different spaces. So you and I touched base probably 3 or 4 weeks afterwards, after all this madness hit. And I was just really trying to understand, how was it for you? So do you want to just share a little bit about maybe what I missed, just a little intro from your end, Raiz Corp, etc., and then we can get into it.
Yeah, so Raiz Corp, effectively 4 divisions. One is we do, as you mentioned, the incubation and acceleration. We've got about 500 businesses that we look after across South Africa, Angola, Tanzania, Zimbabwe. And then we've got what we call curated equity, you might call it private equity, where we've got a whole bunch of investments in businesses. That division is called Partner Elite, where we take equity in businesses and grow them. Then we've got an education arm where we're involved in the education space, both online and physical schools. And then the last thing is, as I mentioned before, is our Africa play, which is not around, has got a slightly different nuance. So those are the 4 main areas that we focus on. But coming back to when you asked how did I handle it, the first thing I did, I've got a mentor I've had for the last 30 years who's in his 70s now. And I phoned him, he lives overseas, and I phoned him and I said to him, so what do I do? Because I was freaked out. And he goes, how the hell should I know? I've never seen this in my whole life. And this guy's a multi-billionaire, very successful businessman. But his next words were the ones that changed everything for me. He said to me, but the one thing I do know is that this is the biggest opportunity of your life. If you do not lens it this way, if you don't lens this as the biggest opportunity of your life, it won't be. And you'll kick yourself in years to come. So the worst thing you can do right now is become defensive. You need to become aggressive. You need to look for all the opportunities, and you need to now become aggressive. And that was a wonderful, like, few sentences that just flipped my mind. And I subsequently had a whole session. I thought about it. How am I going to do that? What's the framework around this? And invited all the CEOs of all the businesses that we've got equity in into basically a 2.5-hour session where we took them through this framework of how to not become basically defensive, but become aggressive and seek out opportunities. So we landed out in our equity portfolio, like having a record year in last year. And I really, really, Mark, believe that is a function of mindset and how we lensed it.
Yeah, I actually get goosebumps, and I'm not just saying that lightly when I hear you say that, because by pure chance, here I am this morning watching this video that I've posted to Facebook Live, and you can, like, I'm watching myself and I am freaked out.
Yeah.
At this point in time, all my speaking gigs have been canceled. All the events that I had planned, they got canceled in 3 days, but they've taken 6 months of pipeline to get there. And I'm just freaking out on one end, but on the other end, I'm saying to myself, you know, like, I think we've got to get our acceptance really quickly. You can see a lot of what I'm saying is to convince myself as much as and I'm documenting. I'm saying to people, I don't know what the hell is going on, but there's these fundamentals. So why I'm getting goosebumps and why I'm relating this to you is, in the first half of last year, I got the absolute shit kicked out of me. And in hindsight, a year later, it's the best thing that ever happened to us. And even when you know, there's this balance that you have to have at play where you acknowledge that you don't know what the hell's going on, or you freaked out, or you scared, and then you have optimism anyway. Do you know what I mean? I talk about this idea of the difference between positivity and optimism, where positivity is almost like everything's okay all the time. Scratch that. Be an optimist, which is much more allowing you to be freaked out, but believe that the future is positive. It allows you to have cognitive dissonance, which is something that I learned directly from you. It's in my happiness workshops. It's been the biggest thing. So I would first, you know, speaking to you helped me when you framed it that way a year ago, and it shows you how mental business is, if for nothing else. So I'd love to get an overview from you. As you look at the business landscape right now in South Africa specifically, what are you seeing? Who are the people who are knocking it out of the park? Or should I say, what are they doing? What are the entities that are knocking it out of the park doing? And what are the other entities doing poorly that have got them into a certain amount of trouble, in your perspective?
Before I answer that, I just want to come back to your point around the, you know, it's how you think about it. My mentor, same dude, his words to me in my 20s were, entrepreneurship is 99% psychology and 1% hard work. It's how you actually deal with situations. And you know, and everyone who's an entrepreneur is watching this knows that, you know, you get to these points where you think, I can't do it anymore, or I don't want to do it anymore, or I don't know how to handle it. And retrospectively, when you look back at it, you did handle it. And it was your psychology, and sometimes you say, I overreacted, underreacted, etc.
Yes.
It was more what's going on in your head than in reality.
Yes.
And knowing how to manage the gray matter between your ears, I think, is very important. But just coming back to your question around, you know, what are they doing to succeed? For me, what COVID has done has basically ruptured the market. It's like an earthquake. Tectonic plates have moved. I can give you all the cliched about, you know, now it's all a level playing field, that the small guy is as equally affected as the big guy. But there's still, what we have as small businesses is we have a level of nimbleness that the big guys don't have. We can both spot it and get to it quicker, as opposed to the bigger corporates. And ironically, what's been happening right now is my inbox over the last 8 months has been filled with emails from corporates saying, come talk to us about how to think entrepreneurially, because we recognize that we need to, but we actually, when we say, okay, let's all go and think entrepreneurially, like, what does that mean? How do I do that? And so there's a big understanding that corporates are trying to think entrepreneurially, and the small guys have got a huge advantage now because they can get to these opportunities quickly. So I think the first thing you have to realize, coming back to, is that there's major opportunity right now, like massive, massive opportunity. I have not seen this amount of opportunity in my 21 years of running Raiz Corp. I've not seen this much opportunity. And what that is that you've got things that were overpriced becoming, I'm going to say, underpriced. Now, I won't even say normalized, they're underpriced. And when that happens, you go, well, who's burning? What demand does that create? Now, all of a sudden, I'll give you an example of that. The auction space is booming right now because everyone's getting rid of assets, right, to try and get cash. So everyone's getting rid of assets. Then you think, okay, if you think about logically, the first type of business that's going to do well is the auction business. But that's not the way to think. That's like, let's call it, that's like, a white belt, if you're karate. The black belt thinking is going, okay, so if there's going to be lots of auctioneers, what demand is that going to create? Okay. Yes. And let me rather go to that space, right? So you've seen if I give you another example, in the e-learning space, everyone's gone digital. This kind of, that's gone. So now every person and their dog is running an e-learning business, right? It's like everyone sort of crowded into that space, and it's actually made it very confusing for the market. The question is that to ask yourself, if there are thousands of e-learning providers, what demand does that create? What crisis does that create? All of a sudden, it might be that I need to order this market, which is a beautiful thing to do, and I'll talk about that just now if we've got time. Or it is to provide the market that is providing the market with a service.
Yes.
And that's where I've been taking my CEOs to.
I tell you this regularly, so this is not a shock to you, but there is a saying that you came up with, you tweeted it. I know it off by heart. I study that framework. I'm sure you know what's coming. And I share it with people all the time because I think it's the basis for where we're at. The way I heard you say it was that there is no secret to business. Business is just the constant exchange of value. The question lies, what is valuable to whom? How do you efficiently create that value? And how do you widely communicate it? I wish that in schools, over and above entrepreneurship, I wish what we studied was value creation as opposed to business. Because I think what happens is people equate business to profit or gaps. And it's not to say that these don't matter. Of course they do. But the underlying thing for me of success is value creation. And I feel like as you're speaking now, you're pointing to those things. Like first, it's obviously becoming aware of what is valuable to whom and asking yourself, I guess it's a practice to be able to ask yourself those questions and spot these things over time. You learn. And then how do you efficiently create that value so that you don't spend 10 Rand trying to create 2 Rands worth of value? And how do you widely communicate it, I guess, is a function of sales, marketing, and advertising. So I've been quoting you ad nauseum on this. And it's actually the heart and soul of this cut the fluff thing, because what I'm seeing in the market is that you're right about the mental space without question. What that's leading to is that most people are doing the quid pro quo. They're not offering value in a time where what COVID has done is it's much like recessions. People are clinging to value. And so many businesses that are doing poorly, in my mind, it's just because they're going about things. It's not just because they haven't changed. It's because they don't understand value creation, and therefore they're not looking for these gaps. And they see themselves much more as nouns than verbs. In other words, I am a lawyer, not I lawyer. And I see when people attach their identities heavily to something, it's very hard for them to shift. So would you agree with that? And this is why I love having you, because you see these things.
Are you asking if I agree with myself?
No. I mean, are you seeing that the rupture in the market is largely coming down to that?
100%. I in that, remember I told you I spent 2.5 hours with my CEOs. The one example I used was a plumber who in the UK was completely decimated because they couldn't go out and plumb in lockdown. If that's the word.
Yeah,
plumb. Okay. So what he did was he worked out, what does he have? What assets do I have? He goes, I've got knowledge, I've got a camera, and I've got a bit of social media understanding. And he created on YouTube, he created this whole basically series of how to do your own plumbing. Market created demand. Now I've got plumbing issues, leaks, leaking taps, leaking pipes, whatever the case may be. So there's demand now created. There was no supply based on this environment. He had knowledge, and he said, how do I create value in this space? Create the series, then got literally over 1 million subscribers because he communicated that value.
Yes.
Then reversed that into advertisers, and now has closed down his plumbing business and has become a celebrity plumber. Okay?
Yes.
So that is a great example of somebody who's verbing and not nouning.
Yes.
I'm not a plumber. I know about plumbing, and I can give that value around plumbing in multiple ways. Before COVID, I used to go there and physically go, with the wrench and the whatever you do with plumbing, okay. and now I can do it, by speaking in front of a camera. I'm still exchanging value.
Yes.
Around plumbing. I've got that, but I'm doing it in a different way, and that's really where I've been trying to take all the entrepreneurs I'm working with is to think that way. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use yours, which is verbing, not nouning.
Well, listen, if you were to charge me royalties on the value creation sentence, I do attribute you, to be fair, everywhere I go. But it's so succinctly just that framing in that sentence. If we were to study that as young people going forward, and then understand that profit, for example, is a byproduct of the value that you create, and to understand why companies do so well in the context that they do, because they create immense value. What I want to do is just quickly take a break. So if you guys can just go there on screen with me there, partner, Nico, I want to just give WeWork a quick shout out. This is not one of those like Verimark ads. You can come back on me there, partner. Big love for my partner, Nico and Merit, who are in the back there. They're always helping us switch it up and make sure that you feel like you're watching a bit of a TV show instead of one angle. Big thing for us is, this is not a huge jump, but WeWork have been immensely supportive of series like Cut the Fluff. And we have loved being in the WeWork space. So the offer I really want to just make to you, it's a simple one, is why don't you come for a tour? They've got a number of spaces around the country. And I think this flexible office solution space is starting to make a lot of sense. And if for nothing else, come and have a look and see if it's a space for you. What I want to do is throw it back to you, Allon. I created the Cut the Fluff show to try speak about a number of topics to help people get through this crazy time. I've experienced it in my own life, in my own business. And really down to me, it comes down to value creation. But I'd love to open the floor for you for the next 10 minutes or so. I would love for you to just kind of share your thinking around whether businesses are doing well, how do they do better? Or if the people as an employee or as an owner of a business sitting there right now and they're just experiencing frustrating times, they're not cutting it. What is the kind of advice that you offer in general? Because you've got such a wide framework and point. So what are some of the things that when people are knocking you in your inbox saying to you, what the hell, Allon, what do I do? What are you sharing with them?
Okay, so I'm going to just leverage that 2.5-hour session that I put together and just go how I shared with the CEOs that where I've got equity stakes in those business, what I shared with them. The first thing is to try and understand what resources you have. So in that freak out before the call to the mentor, what I did was I spent 3 days awake in my office at home with my 3M stickies with my Post-it notes.
Yes.
And basically the whole wall, I looked like that guy from A Beautiful Mind because my whole wall was just these stickies. I was up for 3 days, literally 3 days, no sleep. So my poor kids, one got up for the toilet about 2 a.m. and heard their dad talking to himself, walking around the office. They thought I had lost it. But which was probably true. But what I was trying to do is work out what I had, okay? Yes. Because if I didn't understand what I had, I couldn't do anything better with what I had. So I basically exploded my resources. This is something that happened to me many, many years ago, which I did when Raiz Corp was in crisis in 2002. I did it then. And now I found in 2020, I had to do it again, 18 years later. So what are all my resources? I've got, knowledge resource. I've got these skills. Then I've got these businesses, and then break them down into what they do and what is available there. Then under financial resources, what do I have? Under these resources, what do I have? And then I started organizing them.
Yes.
And then I literally sit on a chair, and very often with a whiskey, and then I stare at that wall. Right.
Yes.
And then if I combine that with that, yes. What do I have? If I combine that with that, what do I have? And it's about then, once I've exploded my resources, it's about recombining those resources to create a new value.
Yes.
So what's the demands? On this wall behind me, I said, this is basically all the demand that was going to be created. So as an example, sore backs was on there, right? I knew there would be people with lots of sore backs. Right.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking, what demand is going to be created? What are the problems that COVID's going to create? And then looking at this resources in order, what can I combine to actually to solve that problem? And when you do that, you start to see, first of all, how, inverted commas, wealthy you are with resource. If you spend time, like 3 days, and I spent 3 solid days exploding this out, I felt incredibly resourced. After that, incredibly. I mean, I literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these post-it notes on the wall. Okay. And then once I ordered them, then I could work with them. So that's the first thing, is how do you explode your resources and recombine your resources? And the example I often use, right, is we have got, into your verb noun example, humans have got an incredibly problematic relationship with labels. And the example I use, if I held up a glass here, I label it a glass, and then I say to you, all right, what is this? And you say a glass. And your mind says, well, the utility of a glass is to drink from, right? It's a glass. So it has a single utility, which is you drink from a glass. But it's actually not true. We labeled it and therefore gave it a utility, but it has multiple sets of utility. It's also a vase. It's a roller. It's a cookie cutter. If I were Bear Grylls, I could, start a fire with it. I could break it and stab you with it. So it's got multiple utility. But
Yes.
the moment I label it, right, then I give it one utility. So in that moment where I'm looking at my wall, I'm trying to decouple my mind from the utility of each resource.
Yes.
To say, what else could that be used for, right? A car, is a car. It is a transport vehicle, but it's also, it's got it can be used for multiple things, including a paperweight. If you're obscure, I could put, it could be anything. I just call it a car, so therefore I think it's a transport thing, but it could be a housing thing. It could be scrap metal. It could be so many things.
Yeah.
And that was a very important part. So I think feeling rich in that time was an incredibly powerful mindset to be in, but not rich necessarily in rand, but rich in resources.
Yes.
And literally a month before that, or a couple of weeks before that, I was poor, defensive, and now I was rich and aggressive.
That is, I mean, I always say to people that even if there were like 2 people watching the whole show, I would do these because I get the opportunity to think about it. And you're so, all I'm doing is just adding the fact that you are so spot on. It's almost like once we create that label, we switch off that part of the brain. It's done now. That's as much as you see it. And there's so much that you're shutting off. So you're thinking around creating your war room, so to speak, this huge wall with all these sticky notes to understand what are the resources that I have to create potential value. And then how do I repurpose how do I relabel the multiple resources that I have so that they're not just one thing? That alone should be like a subject. And it's because it's not just about COVID. COVID was just an amplifier. There are many times recessions would cause the same thing. People in their different businesses, industries have ebbs and flows, so what you're talking about is not a great response to COVID. it's a great response to any time you hit those dips to reimagine constant value. And it shows that, in a sense, we have a problem not only with how we label things, but with change. I feel like in the last year, you saw so many people dig their heels in because they're just not used to having to move on a dime, corporates especially.
I want to both agree and disagree with that. And I totally agree with you, right? We have to move on and we have to change. But I want to maybe share with you a very interesting thing that happened to me over the time. So in my younger years as an entrepreneur, I don't know what it is about entrepreneurs, but in January every year, you've got this need to come back and say, this is the new theme for the year. And like, off, we're going to go there. Like, this is the new theme, and off we go, and you bring your team in, and you tell them, and you rah-rah them, you have posters, you have things, and now we're going there. And then the following year, you do the same thing, and the same thing, and the same thing. And we keep like zigzag every year. Yes. And I can almost see my team groaning, okay, what's he going to come up with this year? About 4 years ago, pre-COVID, 4 or 5 years ago, I made a a valuable decision for Raiz Corp, which was to stick to one path. There's a strategy, yes, and I will do this on the way, but I'm going there. When COVID presented, okay, although there was opportunity, I resisted immensely the desire to go off on opportunistic routes, okay, and to keep to the strategy, yes, right? And that was based on what is the concept of core competency, okay? If I've spent so many years building out my core competencies, why would I go now and take an opportunity that didn't use my core competencies, yes, or the markets that were available to me? So one of the things that I had to resist was choosing which move on a dime, but what choices I made. Yes. So those choices always had two things in common. They either used my core competency or used my market. So I could resell something new to a market, or I would reuse my core competencies in a different way. I'll give you an example just quickly. I was asked to get involved in one of those spray things that you walk into organizations. I don't know if you remember that you walk through like a tunnel, it would spray you, and they said, can you get me into discovery, right? So this guy comes and he says, you could take equity. I don't know about tunnels, okay? And discovery is not my client. Yes. I walk away, no matter how lucrative that is. And so many people, I'm just agreeing with you. Yes, so many people went into masks and PPE and sanitizer, that had no core competence, no ability to leverage that, and they were heroes in the moment. Yes. But as the prices came down and the competition, crowded in, yes, they were left with all the stock, and burnt themselves. Many of them did.
I want to come back to that. What I want to just quickly do is just talk to you guys directly because it's question time. So I want you to start getting your Q&A ready as we close this off. For me, I think that you are absolutely spot on. And you actually just given it a framework for me in that it's either part of your core competency or part of your market. Because a similar thing happened for us. And in that space a year ago, and leading up to from about today onward for about the next 3 weeks, you have a lot of weird thoughts going through your mind, because in my space, I make money from gathering people in mass, and suddenly you can't do that, and you don't know when it'll come back, and you figure it won't be soon. And so your mind goes in all these other directions, and then I have all these weird offers from people, but if for nothing else, I'm taking it as we went in the right direction because I didn't actually say it like that in my mind. So you've given me a framework for it, but I knew that I didn't want to throw away all the things that we had built over the last 6, 7, 10 years. And I think quite instinctively and naturally, I moved toward what is our competency, what is our market. And so we've shifted appropriately. It's actually better than we've ever had it, but the medium's totally different what we're doing now. Yeah. And yet, to your point, if I look back, I totally applied those two perspectives. So what I want to do is I want to give you guys, like I said, a chance for some Q&A for Allon. We've got about 15 minutes of Q&A space, so please get them there. Of course, the first question comes straight from Tony Sham. Everybody's just commenting to death here, Allon. Tony Sham's got a question. How do you get out of the rut of keeping the lights on to pursue what you know is the real opportunity?
Well, I think it's a very simple answer. You've got no choice. Like really, if you think about it, always when you've just got no choice, right? Like there's no alternative. Like to create a place in your mind where there is an alternative, but to fight is there is no, like, I don't even know what the word is because it's a false choice. You've got no choice. Entrepreneurs very often by definition are not employable. So you can't go and get a job. So you're going to starve. So you've got no choice. So just carry on. So to me, that was always the wall that I kept bumping into, and entrepreneur, well, I've got no choice. I have to go on. Yes. It's not like we're heroes and we're so strong. We just literally have got no choice but to keep moving. We go back and we tell the stories about how we were on the bones of our arse. But the reality is we had just no choice but to move on. So, Mr. Sham, you've got no choice.
I love that, and I've seen that I don't wish it upon anybody, that the fear that comes with that initially. Because it's funny, you look back a year ago, now we have so much more experience, we understand. Maybe COVID, in the beginning, we didn't know, is this going to kill 1 out of 3 people, 5 people? I don't know, what is it? Now we can just see by pure numbers that that's not the case. Maybe there's even been a slight overreaction, and that's subjective. But then you also see when the numbers rise, the healthcare system goes for a loop. So there's a lot of confusion, but we still have more experience now than we did before. But you're sitting there looking at that point in time and you're like, I don't know what to do. The other side of that is, boy, does it get you into action. Because I know for me, you mentioned being unemployable, it's my favorite joke. I always say to people, I am unemployable. I love Allon. I could never go work for Allon. He would hate me. He would kick me out tomorrow. And that is true. And I don't even say that lightly. So knowing that wasn't an option, it galvanized me in such a way. But I must say that on the flip side, if you don't take a little bit of time to rest post when you've readied the ship, and I don't mean rest by going and taking a holiday. I've also just seen in my life that red line, you can't red line 24/7. So you can be awake for 3 days in a row, but then somewhere you've got to slow down to speed up. And it's all these things that you have to learn that no one gives you a manual on, but it is hell of a galvanizing. Okay, Sipo has a question for Allon. With COVID affecting sales on the ground level, how do I get my product on the shelves of big retailers like Pick and Pay? It's a bit of a broad question, but you got big shoulders.
These things. Okay, you just keep knocking. For me, that question about creating demand is really 2 routes to creating demand. One is marketing, one is sales. And with the advent of social media and digital media, there's a lot of, and I don't want this to sound bad, but there's a lot of laziness that it's created in startups where the default place to go is that I'm going to create demand through digital media. Yes. So I'm going to advertise a lot, and then the fantasies they're all going to then call, and that phone's going to ring, and then it's like, in fact, I'm going to go one step further. It's like they're going to come through the system, and then it's going to all automate, and it's all going to ship, and it's going to be amazing, absolutely amazing. The guys that have done well now, coming back to my 2.5 hour session and all the sessions that I feel I've been droning on sales teams, sales management, sales. To me, the way out of this is with your knuckles, with the phone, with meetings, with relationships. That to me, it has been the place that very few people have gone. But of course, in COVID times, to sell in these times is very, very difficult. Before, I used to sit with you like this. I could see your body language, could work. We could zing or we could not zing, and we could have a conversation. To build a relationship first time digitally is very difficult. To do presentations digitally is very difficult. So we basically repurposed our whole sales team, retrained them on how to sell digitally, like online through Zoom or through Teams. How do you do that? That's different, because especially when the person doesn't have the camera on, how do you connect with them? How do you know they're not just on Facebook or watching, Mark Sham, right now, while you don't know. So there's that whole that we had to redesign our sales team. So back to the question, to me, it's old-fashioned sales, but with a brand new approach.
I love it. This is why I love having you here. Okay. I think it's Christian. I'm going to go with that. I'm currently employed in tourism, which has very little hope of recovery in the near future. I'd challenge that. But anyways, I would like to start a new business and have never been an entrepreneur before. Any advice?
What assets, just coming back to what I said, what assets do you have? What skills do you have? What assets do you have? And once you basically spend time exploding those, it's about how do I match that with opportunity. The whole thing is now what I call opportunity eyes. You have to train yourself to see opportunity. So you have, like, literally, you have to train yourself with opportunity. One of the businesses that I'm involved in the education is a physical school. We start teaching kids from grade R this concept of opportunity eyes. If there is a problem, if there is an inefficiency, there is opportunity. So keep looking for problems. Become that guy that looks for problems. Listen for problems. That, to train yourself to constantly, and you can do this I go back to my inverted commas training by my mentor in my 20s. I remember the stage where he would take I grew up in Durban, the Daily News and the Mercury, okay, or the newspapers at the time. I assume they're still there. And you'd say, okay, read the paper, okay, and find the opportunities for a business like literally I had to go through and go and say there's an opportunity there, and then he would say to me, how would you take advantage? What would you need? And then it's okay, and I would practice that. So to me, coming back to the question, is that the opportunity eyes is something you can train yourself to do, literally with a newspaper. Just read through a newspaper and say, where's the opportunity? They're talking about this in paragraph 3, they're talking about this. Where's the opportunity there?
Yes.
It's filled with opportunity. The moment that happens, you become overwhelmed with opportunity. Then your next problem kicks in is, which one do I choose? And that comes back to which are the skills that I have the highest capability in, with core competencies and skills, and which resources could I leverage best? And what networks could I use into the future around that? And so that's that constant matching. And that's something you can train yourself on.
It shows me that from the beginning you were teaching yourself value creation. It's why, and I have to tell you guys, if you want to do yourself a favor, you want to go follow Allon specifically on Twitter, because he has an innate ability to package large-scale wisdom into small bite sizes. Whenever I read your tweets, I'm like, and like I say, that one particularly sat with me. But you're right. I think it's so interesting to look at wherever there's friction or wherever there's a problem. In fact, even I see it with young people or people my age, where when they think about entrepreneurship, they have to come up with this new tech idea, versus sometimes it's just taking an existing age-old business and there's a gap to making it better. There's something, if you think about it, like Uber actually, yes, it applied tech, and those examples have been given ad nauseum. But in the real thing, what it did was it took an age-old industry and it just made it much easier. It solved some of the friction points. Oh, well, how do I know when the car's going to come fetch me? How much is it going to cost? Blah, 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 blah. And they used technology to solve a problem. It wasn't the tech. Tech was a means to an end. So it shows you that there are these huge gaps in all markets that exist based on what are the friction points that people are experiencing and how do I solve that. But then to your point, and I think it is a very valuable one, you have to overlay that with what is my core competency and what is my market. Because like you say, you could be like, well, I'm going to go fix all broadcast television now. And if that's not your space, you're just climbing that hill in a big way. I just want to see if we have it. John Parkin just says, I love your comment, Mark. You challenge her statement about recovery in tourism. Interested to hear your response. The short one very quickly is that I just think, again, tourism is struggling on one end, but there are gaps because it's going to open. People want to travel. It is opening. I have a friend who's in Zanzibar right now. It's just finding your way around the friction points. And again, we the easy response to all of these things was shut borders because we don't know what's going on. And yes, numbers, but globally around the world, we've got the vaccine coming into play. They're not in South Africa, but around the world, they're vaccinating at millions. And then on top of that, we're heading into the European summer. And on top of that, we have more experience. So people are less freaked out. I remember the first time I got onto a plane post-COVID and I was totally freaked out. And now I'm just like, there's actually just a protocol. If you follow that protocol, you'd have to be I'm not saying it never happens, but I'm more comfortable. I don't know about you, but I remember the first time going into Woolies and everybody had a mask. It was so freaky. Now it's just the order of business. This is what we do. We wear masks and we've just gotten used to it. So I don't want to underplay what the tourism space is going through in any way. But as a traveler, I see it coming back already. And now it's forcing, like now that my friend's gone to Zanzibar, I'm like, I'm dying. I haven't been out of the country. That's my shtick, is travel. Why am I thinking Europe's the only way to go? And so I'm starting to actively look at where are the places that aren't going to force me to quarantine for 10 days, etc. So I think people are just going to find ways around it. Guys, if you don't have any more questions, I actually think we've about hit that time to wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much for you coming through here. And I really do wish that you and I could create our own university on just around entrepreneurship, because what it shows me is all the stuff that you spoke about today is so transferable. It's beyond even starting a business. If it is true, and I believe it is, that business is 99% mental and 1% hard work, then you could understand that the value of starting a side hustle, starting your own business, experimenting with entrepreneurship is so valuable because of the transferable skills that it offers. I know for me, not only am I unemployable, but I love you're basically playing this constant riddle, aren't you? In entrepreneurship, you're trying to solve a puzzle. I want to leave you, that's your close-up camera. So I want to leave you with the last word in terms of the content, and then I'll just close up the show. But that's your close-up camera over there. You've got however many people watching, and then this will go on to YouTube post where we'll get many more views. So what is the closing thought that you would love to leave with the audience?
I think for me, the closing thoughts, I'm going to plagiarize my mentor and say that you've still got time right now to see this as the biggest opportunity of your life. And it really, really, really is. And when you get that this is the biggest opportunity of your life, it'll kick you into action, and you will be one of those success stories that started in a crisis because you were prepared to look for the opportunity in the crisis.
Allon, I always like to use the opportunity that I have to thank you. Whenever I reach out and say to you, I'm itching to create some content with you, would you help me? You never miss a blink. You always make the effort for me. And I really do wish that we could find more ways of tapping into the knowledge and the reserves that you have. I know you always think of yourself in some instances like a normal guy who's gone on this route. And in some instances I see that, but you have accrued this most incredible knowledge and understanding of the world. And the fact that you are always so free in the way that you share it with other people, I think is so epic. So just from me to you, I really want to just say thank you for always being so open with it. It's one of the many ways that I resonate with you, not just as an entrepreneur. To you guys, I just want to say big love to you for taking the time to actually participate in something like this, especially live. When COVID first hit, webinars were all the rage. And then people started to, I guess they had lots of time on their hands. But I think there's something special about people who make the time to continuously self-direct their learning path. And the fact that you're doing this, whether you're watching it live or later, is just so epic in a time where, as Allon points out so succinctly, it is the greatest opportunity of your life, but only if you choose to see it that way. So thank you for being part of this. If you're keen on coming and doing a tour at WeWork, I'll be sending you an email after this. We'll be back in about 2 weeks with another episode. I'll be announcing the guest shortly. Allon, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
That's it from us, guys. I'm going to get up right now and I'm going to end the show. Chat to you a little